What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Hope you all are having a good day. It is finally Monday, so it is back to work in the garage here, working on some of the toys, and it's honestly starting to get a little chilly out, so it's not really time to be riding these things around, but in the meantime, we can at least build them and actually fix up a few things that we've been needing to do in the meantime. I know the last 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks, we actually been working on the new $100 mini bike project, and we ended up actually getting this thing all built up. We built up exhaust in last video, which actually sounds amazing, but we still need to take this thing out and actually get it tuned up and ripping 100%. So it is too cold for that. So in the meantime, instead of boring you guys with a bunch of mini bike content, kind of wanted to switch it up and bring my off-road mini quad out, since this thing hasn't been on the channel in a few months and actually been sitting here parked for the last couple of weeks since I actually rode it last. Since there is a bunch of things I actually want to get knocked out to this thing and actually fix up, do a couple little much needed upgrades to it, and also show you guys a few things that I actually ended up knocking out off camera. You guys might notice this thing does have brand new suspension on this thing all the way around. So before I get into this thing too in depth, let's get this thing pulled out. Let's get the mini bikes out of the way, play some musical toys, and get this thing right in the center here so we can actually walk all the way around it, and I can kind of show any of the new guys new to the channel this thing and kind of get a little closer look at it. Alright, now that we got the mini bikes moved out of the way and put into the corner and got the mini quad out in the center, we can actually get a walk around this thing. So if you guys are new to the channel, this is my Coaster 125 that has a Honda GX200 swapped into it, and we basically built this thing from the ground up, touched every nut and bolt at this point, and we still do need to do a few upgrades to this thing and actually get this thing 100% and actually get it pretty much as dialed in as possible. That's kind of the goal of this thing. That's why it's still in its orange ugly color, and I do want to get this thing powder coated or painted soon, so I just want to get the last couple bits really finished up on this thing and should be 100% ready to roll, tear it all down, get her looking pretty, and then we can actually have some more fun with it, beating the crap out of it and not really caring about it. But at this point, the couple little upgrades I did to this thing off camera was this new suspension on the front, and I also did new suspension on the back. I did air shocks all the way around because the old suspension was just too stiff, and now we actually have a little bit of travel in the front and definitely a lot more in the back, which is actually a lot more comfortable to ride this thing, and it actually lets this thing flex up a good bit. And the only other thing I ended up knocking out was I actually started building a little storage tray for this thing. So you can see under the seat here, I built me up a little sheet metal kind of storage tray that fits right underneath the seat in between the frame here and actually clears the exhaust literally by like 1/8 of an inch. I do have a bunch of the gold heat tape underneath it, so hopefully kind of keep some of the heat out of there, but if anything, I'll rewrap the exhaust up a good bit, so it should hopefully keep a lot of the heat out of the tray. But we still need to finish up actually putting a hinge on the seat so we can actually lift it up and access the storage box when the seat's on there. So I don't have the other hinge for that just yet, so that come in tomorrow. We can finish that up. So in the meantime, I'm gonna start working on actually installing some lights on this thing. So I kind of ordered up the same kind of setup as these. I just don't really like the way these ones look, but we can kind of use these up for mock-up. But my plan is to kind of have these kind of stacked, so one like right here and one down here, just to kind of keep it inside the frame. Don't have to worry about knocking these off or breaking them off. But before we actually install those onto the quad, good one, but we actually need to get a charging system or a battery set up on this thing, like a drill battery or a 12-volt battery. but I really don't want to fit one of those on here, so I want to build a charging system off the motor itself. From the research I've done, these Honda GX200s come factory with the charging coils inside the flywheel that just don't have the main part that actually bolts on the engine and sends power out. So I do need to pull off the flywheel just to double check my research, and I do have some charging coils sitting on the table over there that we can actually install inside this motor and have some power coming from the motor, so whenever this thing's on, should power up the lights. And I do want to add a switch in line just so we can kind of flick the lights on and off as we need it, so they're not on 24/7 whenever this thing's running. So I'm gonna start working on that, actually starting to tear off the side cover, getting the flywheel off of there so we can get the look at that flywheel and install the little charging coils I got sitting on the table over here, and actually start probably wiring up the headlights for this thing. And the new lights should actually come in tomorrow, so then we can start building up some brackets for this thing. Probably got to weld to the frame a little bit. I know I'm gonna have to weld to the frame to build those hinges on the seat, so that's kind of another reason why I'm not painting this thing. But really, once we get the lights and the seat on this thing would basically be all complete and basically the ultimate mini quad. The only other thing I would like to do is maybe some under paneling or some side paneling, sorry. But other than that, if you guys want to see that, that'd be coming some more sheet metal work, because I don't really show too much of my sheet metal work, especially since this piece probably took me like 4 or 5 hours to make, and then I got my little snorkel box that took me a couple other hours to make before. So kind of cool little pieces on there, and I could make some nice paneling on the bottom or the sides, just kind of spice this thing up a little bit more, but I'm not really too sure on it. I'd have to kind of play around with the idea. But enough talking, let's get to work actually tearing down this motor and seeing what we got going on in there, and see if we can actually get a charging system on the motor itself. So after fighting with the little flywheel puller, that thing didn't end up working. I ended up just using the pry bar and hammer method, prying against from the back and hitting the crank. Got it to pop off there, and thank God I did, because this flywheel does not have the magnets in it to actually do a charging system. But luckily enough, I do have one from an old motor I bought that was all tore apart, and it does have the magnets in there. And lining up the keyways, they do both line up perfectly, so I should be able to use this one no problem. And this one's actually a little bit thicker, so I'm gonna get that installed with the new charging coils that I have sitting on the table over here. Get these bolted on there, and then run the wiring through the little heat shield and get this thing all put back together, and then we'll actually have a charging system on this thing. And I should get a voltmeter and actually check it with this thing running, but I don't have one right now, so I'll probably end up doing that tomorrow. But enough talking, let's get this thing all slapped back together. You guys just saw we got this thing all slapped back together with the new flywheel in there and the charging coils. The wires were definitely real close to the flywheel. I got them nice and tucked as far as I could away from it. Pretty sure there's another heat shield that's supposed to go in there to actually help hold the wires back away from the flywheel instead of getting them all eaten up. But I think we're all right, and I got it all back together. She's turning over, so I'm actually gonna start this thing up and see if she's all good, make sure she runs good. And now that we actually have a plug coming off here that should have some power coming out of it, I do have a little LED bar right here that has just a power and ground coming out of it. So I'm gonna try and just hook it up real quick and see if this thing will light up while it's running, because if so, then we know our charging coil is good. If not, then we might have an issue or something else is going on. So let's get this thing started up. I got you guys set up on the tripod, and we'll see what happens here. So, this thing normally starts up like a champ, so we will see right now. Oh, chokes. Nice. Cool. Another flywheel didn't cause any issues. So, okay, that's a issue. But hey, we got 12 volts coming from the plug. At least I think it's 12 volts. I'm not really sure. I'm gonna get a voltmeter tomorrow and actually see what the voltage is coming out of this thing. But it's enough to actually light up the light, so we're good. I know the LED's kind of flashing a little bit. It's shining, it's flashing a little bit at idle, but once you actually rev it up, it clears up and actually brightens up a lot more. So that's sweet. We're all good to go. We actually know we got power coming to this thing. So I think I'm gonna start thinking of a good idea on how to route all the wiring and where to put the switch, because I do want to put a switch in line of this just so we don't have the lights on all the time. And I think it's gonna be somewhere up here, just because I kind of made this like a little dashboard section. But we're all good to go now, so I guess now get this wired up, and then once we get the lights tomorrow, build a little bracket up, and it should be all good to go. Before you guys run in the comments, if you know where I kind of messed up on wiring this whole setup in, the LED bar should not go straight to the charging coil, and after doing a little bit of research, I did find out you should run a voltage regulator, which luckily I do have one off one of the $100 mini bikes, and I am running the same thing on the other $100 mini bike with a drill battery and all that, just because I left it stock as much as possible, and that is working perfectly. So I'm gonna end up running this as well, and I kind of just decided with this whole setup, I'm actually gonna run a battery with it too, just because I have it lying around already. This is actually for my dad's bike over there. We are gonna be doing electric start on that soon, so I'm gonna have to order another one of these up for his bike. But I did want to do electric start on this thing as well, so having the battery already mounted up and wired in for the most part should be nice and handy. So I just been sitting here kind of deciding where to actually put the battery. No, it's not going to sit in the storage box because it won't even fit at all, and I was just sitting like up here. It would kind of fit right in between these brake cables there and right behind the steering, but I kind of feel like it kind of clutters up this whole little section, and it'll probably get hit with a bunch of water from the front wheels. So decided I will snake it right back behind the motor here. It actually fits perfectly in between the torque converter and the swing arm there. So I made this little kind of battery box way back, just kind of into my free time. So I might use that, or I might 3D print a little battery box kind of back here. And then I got the voltage regulator. I think I'm gonna kind of 3M tape to the battery so I can just kind of plug it in and out, and then I still got the plug it right into the charging coil, and I got 2 wires coming off here that'll go straight to the battery and actually charge up the battery, and then we can run all our lights and accessories off that in the future. So once I actually get the lights in, I think that's when I'm actually going to wire all of those up, especially since I need a switch still. So I think I'm, in the meantime, going to get this battery all situated, figure out a mount for that, and then get the voltage regulator set up too. And then tomorrow we can just kind of knock out the rest of the wiring, get the LED bar set up, and we actually should get the hinges in too, so we can knock out the little seat hinge on that, so we can finish that part up, and this thing will be all fucking dialed in. Alrighty boys, so it's actually been 2 days later since I last actually filmed with you guys, but don't worry, yesterday I started working on a few things, actually kind of dialing in a couple of things just to make it a little bit nicer at the end of the day. But yesterday we did get the rest of the parts in, so we got the new LED lights that we're actually going to mount up on this thing, and then a bunch of just wiring stuff, some switches, ring connectors, inline fuses, and I also ended up getting the other hinge for the seat, and I ended up just knocking that out yesterday, so I got the hinges all welded up to this thing. And now we actually have access to the storage cubby underneath the seat now. I do need to kind of clean those welds up and get them all painted up. I think I'm just going to wait till I actually tear down this frame so I can get those real welded up nicely and actually get it all dialed in nice. Because I think I'm going to actually replace this rear end because I'm not really sure if I like it and maybe want to extend it out a little bit more. But we'll worry about that later. But I also ended up actually pulling off the flywheel again and the side cover and all that, and actually swapping the coils around, which I'll show you guys real quick in here. So now the wire actually comes out the back side right back here, so it just makes it a little bit easier to just plug it right in, keeps the wire nice and short. And then I also figured out a battery mount for this thing, so I got my little logo in there. It took me like 3 or 4 tries just to get this battery to actually fit inside the little 3D printed case, but we got a nice little strap, we got the voltage regulator glued to it, and she is all good to go. Started wiring some stuff up, so now basically just need to get that mounted up in there, but I do need to build a little piece under there just to actually get this to sit level up in there. But now that we actually know where the battery's going to lie, we can actually start laying out some wiring for the lights and getting the switch mounted up. So we do need to drill a hole in this little center section to actually get the switch mounted up, and then we can start wiring this all up, figuring out all of our lengths. I do want to add a ground from the battery to the engine just to make sure it has a grounded system, grounded to the frame, and then actually get these mounted up as well. So I've been playing around with the little bracket that I actually came with and kind of mounted these two together at the same time. So my idea was just to kind of have them stacked just like this, but a little bit offset to kind of match the frame. And I think I'm gonna mount them somewhere just around like right here. It's gonna be kind of hard to show you guys with one hand, but she looks pretty good. And I think I'm gonna end up actually using some square tubing to actually kind of weld up inside between these little strut braces. So it'll kind of be like a little strut brace to actually tie these two sides together, because the only points are right up there and way down here. So I actually put that in there and it'll give me a nice flat spot to actually mount it up nicely, and then we can get this all wired up. So I think I'm gonna start just working away on this and just kind of filming as I go and knocking a few things out, because the wiring's gonna be pretty tedious, getting that all wrapped up and actually getting all the lengths perfect. So we'll see what happens, but I'm gonna try to film as much as possible and just get this all knocked out so we can actually see this thing with some lights on it. So we're almost just about finished up with this thing. You guys saw in the time lapse, we did test out the lights and they do work, which is sweet. I kind of wired it all up and didn't even test them at all, so I'm super glad that they do work. But now it's finally time to actually get it all slapped up into the frame here. I got a mess going on around here with all my wiring stuff and all that. I tried showing you guys a little bit as I went kind of building this stuff up, but I got the mounting for the headlights and just a little bit of square tubing welded up in there, and then a hole drilled through it so the mount can actually go right onto it. And then I kind of stripped off the snorkel and stuff so we can actually get a little bit more access to this kind of vicinity and actually get the wires routed up nicely. I did drill my hole out for my switch, so we got that hole drilled out, and basically just need to take this whole battery, headlights, and wiring setup and just toss it in the frame, get it all zip tied up, and this thing will be all good to go. But I did kind of want to show you guys the wiring real quick, just in case anyone did want to replicate it or attempt to kind of wire up their own headlights. So this system is pretty simple for the most part. So I'll start off with basically where we start off with the charging coil. So you got the charging coil heading up into the voltage regulator here, and then you get the voltage regulator coming out with two wires, one positive, one negative, that actually charges up the battery. So we got those hooked up, and then I got two more positive and negatives coming off of this thing. I actually have two grounds on this side that are tied together. So we got one going up for the LED bars, and then I also made one just for the engine so we can actually ground the battery to the chassis. And then the power is just kind of coming up for the LEDs. We do have an inline fuse on that, so we shouldn't have to worry about it shorting out or anything. And then just kind of heading up the LED wiring, you kind of see I do have a switch in line, so I did put the switch in line of the ground because I prefer to do it in the ground and not have power going through the switch. Kind of save the switch from burning out or causing any issues. And then just coming off that, we got a power and ground just going straight up to the lights. And I got these lights wired together in series. So now we just got two connectors coming off it, power and negative. Connect those up and everything is working perfectly. I just flip this little switch and they light right up. These things are super bright, so I'm kind of excited to actually see how these things look on the bike and actually light up. The little mount I did, I kind of just used one of the factory mounts that came with it and kind of just used 2 of the 8 holes on there on each side, so 2 and 2, so 4 out of the 8 holes on there, and just kind of stacked them right above each other so they look pretty sick. Got one single stud coming out of it, simple, quick, and easy. So it's finally time to get this all swapped onto the bike and actually see this thing with some headlights and them actually brighten up and shooting at the wall. I might even take this thing out tonight and just see if we can do a little rip around and actually see the lights at night, but we'll see. It is freezing outside, so I'd really prefer not to have to ride this thing right now, but we'll see. Let's get this thing all knocked out and actually see the final product with everything all mounted up on the quad. Alrighty boys, before I show you guys these things all put together with the battery in there and the lights on there, like how I routed everything, I wanted to show you guys how bright these things really are. So I shut down half the lights in here. We're gonna flick these on. And you can see they're pretty bright, but with the lighting up here, it kind of throws it off. Just wait, turn this off. And now you can really see how bright these things are. These things are just lighting up the whole garage. Because if I turn them off, it's pitch black. So those are sweet. These are going to be perfect for going off-roading at night or even just doing some street driving around. So let me get the lights turned back on and I'll kind of show you guys the whole setup. Just saw how bright these lights are. They are a little bright for this whole little setup, but hey, it'll be perfect for any nighttime driving or taking this thing through some trails in the evening time and it's starting to get dark out. So everything is all wired up and set up in the frame here. Everything's all nicely tucked. I do need to finish up a few things, like there is a gap right in between the light here and the actual square tubing I welded in, so we'll add a little spacer right in there. Should be quick and easy. Might even make it a little bit taller, just kind of bring the lights up a bit because they are like stuffed right in the frame there. But the only wiring you really see is right here at the lights, and then everything else is all tucked up in the frame. Got the switch drilled right through the little center here, and she works perfect. She is nice and stiff, and I hopefully have enough room right here for in the future to actually run electric start, because now that we have the battery and the charging system all wired up, we really just need a starter and a flywheel, and we can actually have electric start on this thing. So do stay tuned for that soon, because we are going to be doing it on my dad's bike. So once I actually learn on that, we can get it swapped over to this, and I got nice clean wiring and everything all set up. And the only other thing we need to do is actually finish up a new battery box for it. Since I had to modify this one to actually get the battery fit in there, we do need to do a new one of those, and then also add like a little spacer just to kind of help level this out real quick, and it should be all good to go. But all the wiring's nice and tucked. Barely even see any of it. I don't have any zip ties on any of it. And you got the charging coil hiding right behind there. Everything is all looking good and working perfect. I did check the charging system with the motor running, and she's charging up. The lights aren't pulling more power than the charging coil, so we're all good to go there. So this thing is basically all dialed in. The last thing we need to do is do electric start on this thing. So I'm stoked that this thing's coming out. Got some lights on this thing now, and actually got a bit of storage actually under the seat to actually be able to use. This thing's all filled with metal shavings now, so I have to clean that out. But everything's all good. The seat's nice and solid, and this thing is still looking the par. All the wiring's tucked, battery's tucked. You can't even see it. I might even build a little shield for back here, because I already know some water's going to fly up from these back wheels and even the chain and get on the battery. So I might build a little kind of block shield somewhere right in between these two bars and the swing arm, just to kind of protect the battery a little bit more. But other than that, it shouldn't be really too bad, just getting a little bit of water on it. But I think that's going to be the end of today's video. Really not much more to actually knock out on this thing other than electric start, which I don't have yet. So soon enough, we will be doing electric start and actually be able to take this thing out ripping, and it should be all good to go. And at that point, tear this thing down, get her powder coated and painted, and see how she looks in the end, because then at that point, we can kind of just have as much fun with it as possible and hopefully not break it again, because I don't want to do any more welding on this frame, especially once it's all done and powder coated. So I think that's going to be the end of today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hope you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more content, and peace out.